finally somebody who's going to get to me straight.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I appreciate that.
You got it, man. Shit.
All right. Well, BoxingVoice.com live here with Chris Mannix. Chris, man, I want to thank you, obviously, for sitting down with the Boxing Voice. But outside of that, I want to thank you for fighting a good fight, man. I didn't really know what to expect when you transitioned into Dazn, but I really enjoy the breath of fresh air, how you stay honest, regardless of who you're interviewing, whether it be a post-fight or an interview that you're doing. You've been able to really be honest with the audience live on Dazn, which is something that I just want to say thank you for. That wasn't a question, so just tell us your experience at Dazn overall.
It's been great, and I appreciate you saying that. It's two things go into that. One is that Dazn, as long as I'm being truthful, doesn't care what I say. Perfect. Like there's no rules with what you can say or what you can't say. They have never once said to me, don't talk about something like that, whether it's, an example will be like, I will not call this a 4-division championship fight. Like, there's no chance. It is not a 4-division. The Rocky Fielding fight was not world championship. It wasn't. It's not. Canelo, I think, transcends belts, and I don't think it really matters, but that wasn't a real world title fight. The other part is that, is my day job at Sports Illustrated. I got to be accountable there. Like, I can't, run my mouth and seem like a shill for somebody if I have to go back to, being a writer and go visit, Top Rank or talk to the PBC guys and do stories on them. So I can't be that way. So it's all kind of worked out well. I can't do it anyway, and Dazn wouldn't ask me to do it, to be kind of one of those shills out there.
Interesting that you say that. I'm sorry to jump back in, but interesting that you say that because you obviously, there's been times when you are talking about Anthony Joshua, for instance, and you're being honest in the situation. But I guess this is a little bit different because times are changing with the franchise champion and interims and WBA regulars. Like you said, you won't respect that as a 4th world title because the 3rd one was a regular. So is Gervonta going to be a champion? Is Devin Haney now, who's with Dazn, is he a champion, or is that some sort of WBC version of the WBA regular? And now, do you not respect Haney as a true champion because you don't respect Canelo as a 3rd divisional champ? So confusing.
I'm trying, to be honest, I'm still trying to wrap my head around an opinion on the franchise champ. Same thing with Charlo. I'm still trying to kind of form the opinion. I guess I'll have an opinion whenever Devin Haney fights. Fights next, and I guess that's next week. He's going to defend that title. It's not real. Like, if you're looking at who the WBC champion is, it's Lomachenko at 135 and Canelo at 147. If they pull the same crap with Wilder and move him up to avoid a Dillian White or somebody like that, I'll say the same thing. And look, I one thing I don't understand, like, if take Lomachenko, for example, and your goal is to be the undisputed 135-pound champion, can you still be? Like, you're technically not the WBC champion. So if you fight the winner of Lopez versus Comey, are you really the undisputed lightweight champion? I don't know. And I don't know why. And I actually want to have this conversation with either Lomachenko or Regis Klimas. Like, what the hell are you paying, like, these sanctioning fees for? Like, it's probably like a couple $100,000 you're giving that. Like, take that money, and a better use of it would be go to Sapphire and just throw it at people. Like, I mean, I don't understand why they're giving them that money for a belt that just is completely irrelevant. And the WBC does this. They do this with the Mayan title and the Pearl title. I mean, there's so many damn belts out there.
But do you think that it's a belt, or it's the WBC coming up with a political way of Lomachenko avoiding Devin Haney? Because I spoke to Carl Moretti at the convention, and he said they petitioned to make Vasil franchise champion, which I spoke to Devin Haney yesterday at his media workout, and he says, look, we have plenty of time. I don't got to fight November 9th. If Vasil wants to fight me, we'll negotiate with him straight away. But he'd rather stay waiting for the winner of Comey Lopez. So can we really say that Lomachenko is the champion at 135 when he's the one putting his belt on the shelf?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point that he petitioned for it, and I don't really understand it, because my belief is that whatever happens in the winner of Comey versus Lopez, they fight Lomachenko. And I think Lomachenko's going back down. Unless Gervonta Davis steps up and says, I'll fight you at 135, he's not going to fight at 135. Like, there's nothing there for him. Like, a Haney fight doesn't make financial sense for him right now. There's probably more options on the top-ranked side of the street at 130. They're big at 130 right now. You might have Shakur Stevenson coming up to fight at 130 next couple of fights. So either way, I think those titles are all going to be vacated. So I don't really understand why they'd want that franchise championship tag if ultimately by the middle of next year, he's not going to be at 135 anyway.
I honestly believe they were under the assumption that the media and public wouldn't or would be fooled. Because when interviewing Mauricio, he says, well, Lomachenko still can be undisputed. I'm like, how? He gave up his belt. He's like, no, but he's still the champion. He has 2 gold medals, and
good. He's like, he's got a pony in his backyard. Like, I don't understand any of this. Like, this is all like, it's just all nonsense. And look, the big things for guys like you with this show and people in my position and other writers there, just keep calling them out on it. Just constantly, whether it's social media or podcast or radio or TV, it doesn't matter. Because you're right, people don't understand. Like, there are a lot of, like, the casual boxing fans I deal with in the NBA that are like, I don't know who's a champion of what. Like, they kind of get the heavyweight scene because it's heavyweights, but everything else, it's just like, this is all muddled. I dealt with it working for NBC, and because at NBC, they liked, when I was there several years ago, they liked having titles on the line, and these are like the NABF titles. Like, you're going way down. It's like, you know, this guy's fighting for the IBO, whatever. It's just
now with Al Heyman, he seems to have aligned himself with the WBA. They've just completely erased the regular name. Now everyone's fighting for a WBA title. You have to know boxing to know that this guy's the WBA interim or regular or gold, let alone the super.
I'll tell you this much, though. I don't, in print, I almost never mention a sanctioning body, ever. I will just, you're fighting for, and if I don't believe it's a real title, I won't even mention it's a title fight. If it is a real title fight, I'll say fighting for a piece of the 135-pound crown. I think that's one way to kind of go at it, because if you start trying to explain it, that's when the average boxing fans, their eyes kind of glass over. It's like, what? All right, I'm going to go get a beer. Like, I'm out of here. Like, I'm done.
Speaking of the NBA, you do a great job on First Things First. But my question for you is, how do we, as a boxing community, make it to where, like, this stuff is not acceptable? Like we can't have 8 champions in one division.
No, 47 champions, 17 divisions.
Is that what the number is?
Just with the WBA, though. That has nothing to do with IBF.
I'm glad you counted them out. I was never going to do that.
That's just WBA.
I don't know what these organizations are largely shameless. Like, you can't, like, you can keep embarrassing them, but they won't change. Like, they will continue to do. That's not the end of the franchise championship. The WBA doesn't care. Like, you know, Davis moved up, and they'll find another way to screw Andrew Cancio out of being called a real champion. Like, they're shameless. But I guess the only thing you can do is what I said earlier. Just keep hammering them. Like, that's not a real title. That's not a real title. That's not a real title. It's the only thing.
But you are with the networks now. Is there a way to have it? Because I know Thomas Hauser, famous writer, you know, has done a lot of work for the boxing industry. He was able to come on as an advisory role for HBO. Is there a way that maybe you can be in someone's ear and say, look, we don't necessarily need everyone to walk in with some sort of belt around their waist or be given a belt after every fight? I mean, Pro Grace Taylor was a fight that we didn't need a trophy or belts. We just were happy with that fight.
I would say this: the level of control that, you know, the broadcaster have over, like, what they take into the ring, or even whether it's Michael Buffer or Dave Diamante, what they say, it's not really within our jurisdiction. All we can control is what we say on the broadcast. I think Brian Kenny's done a good job of saying, like, of articulating, like, look, this is not, you know, and we will, I'm sure, say on the broadcast, like, Canelo being billed as a 4-division championship, but let's not forget, we were all here back in December when he beat Rocky Fielding for the, you know, that hubcap title that Rocky Fielding held. That's all we can do. We can't. I mean, how many guys bring belts to the ring they won like 6 years ago?
A lot.
It's like
a lot of them.
I'm watching guys like
Zav Judah was infamous
the king
for
of
that.
it. The king of it.
Every child of Zav Judah had like 2 belts.
I see, like, it's like sometimes these fights like a sea of green up there with all the titles that are being held up in the air. I'm like, what's happening here? But the short answer to your question is, like, there's not much we can do as far as that goes. It's just as simple as we can put it, say this is kind of what the reality of the situation is.
I want to get your reaction to the Errol Spence situation and the Errol Spence IG post that he came out and said, "I'm a savage, no broken bones."
Yeah, didn't love that. Didn't. I mean, I'm glad Errol's okay, and as soon as he is okay, I kind of pivot to like, what are you doing, man? Like, you made how much money? Like, call Uber. Like, just get an Uber.
Yeah.
It's just wild. I mean, I guess, look, we were all that age at one point. We thought we were invincible at one point, and certainly, like, the car he was driving is just literally not meant to be driven slow. Like,
it's
it's
built
just
for the
that.
track,
It's exactly like that's the way it is. But all I can hope is that this is like a wake up call, and it's thank God nobody else got hurt, because then you take a life and then your life is over too, because you're going to jail.
We'll be looking at legal situations.
It's just I don't. After you're initially happy he's okay, it becomes like you
What the
better.
fuck?
Yeah, and look, I honestly hope that he does face some consequences. I hope that there are. I mean, I don't want to see him thrown in jail for life, but I hope there is some legal fallout to it, because something like that is really dangerous, and it's just mind numbing. Because I mean, God knows I lived in New York in all my 20s, and thank God for that, because I leave a bar at 4 a.m. just dump myself into a cab and throw my business card at him, like, take me to that address, like, they take me there. And now as an Uber, just press the button, you spend like $30 in your home. I just, that to me is the most, especially in this day and age, that's the most frustrating part of it.
Well, the reason we're all here, Canelo, Kovalev.
Actually, let me jump in,
Yep.
because what I wanted to say was, what 160-pounder you think you can go up to right now and say, here's the $14 million Canelo was giving Kovalev, beat Kovalev Saturday?
What 100? That's a good question.
160-pounder. Because everyone is saying, oh, this is a cherry pick for Canelo. Like, the fans think this is so easy when he's moving up 2 divisions. He's fighting a guy that beat Andre Ward,
Some people
dropped people with a
the
jab, has 80+% knockout ratio. Like, yeah, all right, he's a little bit old. He's still 1 entire year younger than Gennady Golovkin.
Can I get your reaction to the first time you heard Kovalev versus Canelo?
No, but that's different. I'm a huge Canelo fan, so I know his skills, and I said that's a cherry pick for Canelo because it's strategic. It's not the traditional cherry pick of boxing.
I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive, though. Like, it can be a cherry pick and also be a really, really tough fight. Like, I mean, I'm not going to fight Beterbiev. Like, that's just lunacy. Like,
Thank you.
Even Bob.
Not yet.
I don't think he's ever going to do that. Like, even Bob. I was ringside in Philly for that one. And
Even if he performs to the
Bruh,
top,
did you see Beterbiev?
I
He
definitely.
ain't gonna fight him, bro.
Here's to answer the question like in a roundabout way. Like I've had this conversation with Ray Leonard a couple of times when this fight was announced, and Ray is so incredible to talk to about this stuff. Like, he keeps reminding me of what happened with Donnie Lalonde, and he says, like, I got in the ring with Donnie, and people that mostly people listening to your podcast know this story. Like, Donnie was 175-pound champion, Ray was at 160. They met at 168. Donnie, of course, rehydrated pretty well up into the mid to high 170s, and Ray's like, I got in there. And the first time he threw a jab, I was like, oh, crap. Like, that hurt. That really hurt. And he wound up knocking Donnie out. But Ray told me, like, that night, he vacated the title. It's like, I'm out. No, I don't want your 175-pound belt. You can take that back. Take it home with you, Donnie. Like, I get the feeling that unless this goes just Rocky Fielding-esque for Canelo, he's going to say, I'm done. Like, I'm going back down in that fight.
Let him answer, though. So, Charlo.
I don't think this, to answer that, I don't think there's anybody. Could Demetrius Andrade stink out the joint and win a decision? Maybe. He's a tall guy too.
I mean, he out of all the 60s, he's been down the most.
True.
Maybe Kovalev puts him away.
True. That's why I wouldn't bet on him. I think Andrade, but I think he has the most skills. Andrade, so many guys come up to me and tell me Andrade's the best fighter in boxing. Like, Sean Porter told me this was like last week. He's like, Demetrius Andrade is the #1 pound-for-pound guy in boxing. So
I think they just want him to get his shot.
Probably. Like, they all go back to the amateur ranks with these guys. But maybe that, fuels their opinions too. Like, they've been in the ring with them in the amateur ranks. And he's really good. But Andrade...
He helped Sean get ready.
Yeah, Andrade could stink it out. I don't know that Charlo could... I think Charlo gets hit with something... who else am I missing? Is there somebody else in that?
That's about the big
I don't
three.
think Golovkin could do it. I think Golovkin could hit with something big.
Actually, that's a good one. You
before.
don't think Golovkin will do it?
No, and I've heard the Abel Sanchez used to tell me the stories of how he's got video apparently of like Golovkin just dropping Kovalev with a body shot, and but that was 10 years ago, and both those guys are faded. And I don't think Gennady's as bad as he looked against Derevyanchenko. I think him being sick was real. Like, I had been hearing that stuff during the week. And one thing you remember about Gennady, like, he'll never cancel a fight. Like, he fought Gabe Rosado, like, when he was on his deathbed. Like, he was lying in the hotel the day before, and he didn't want to go. His team didn't want to go through with it, but he still did. So I give him credit for doing that, but I think he was a shell of his former self. All that being said, I don't think he gets in and beats Kovalev. I think that becomes a power punching contest because Gennady is not a great body puncher. He has body punch knockouts, but he's not a great body puncher. And I don't think you win a power punching contest with Sergey Kovalev.
Wow, so I'm sorry.
I was going to ask him, could you see any scenario that Kovalev can get the victory over Canelo by not knocking him out?
Decision.
In Vegas?
That's why I'm asking.
I understand. Like, I'll say this.
I mean, he got the decision over Ward here.
Let me tell you 2 things. He didn't get a decision.
No, he didn't.
The first fight?
No, he lost.
Ward won. He
should have
won, but he lost.
Oh, okay.
He should have won. That was the fight that I thought he outboxed Ward. I had him like 2 points for.
Yeah, I thought he
Kovalev.
won the first fight too.
I mean, everybody did.
I had
Everybody
Ward
did.
needing a knockdown in the 12th to like get it even, but he didn't get it.
Yeah. I don't know. There are 2 things that look. Let's be real. Like 2 things that worry me a little bit coming into this fight. One is Russell Mora, the referee, who has never done a fight on this level. He has one of the reasons he was chosen was because he had not done any Canelo fights before. I think his last one was 2009 in Mexico. He'd not done any Nevada Canelo fights. So they wanted a neutral guy in that position. But he hasn't done a fight at this level. And there are going to be points where I think Canelo is going to hurt Golovkin. I think you got to be a little concerned if your main events about
Kovalev.
Kovalev. Keep thinking Golovkin. Kovalev. You got to be concerned if your main events about an early stoppage in that situation.
Someone
that worries
jumping
me.
in.
That worries me. The other thing that worries me too is the third judge in. Don Trella is the guy that had that god awful round where Golovkin in the first fight, Golovkin Canelo, he scored it for Canelo. Remember, it was a 114-114 card. He scored that for Canelo Alvarez. And I mean, like when you do previous Canelo fights, my biggest problem with that judging crew. Love Julie Letterman. She's terrific. I think she's one of the best judges in boxing. But Dave Moretti, of course, Vegas staple, Nevada staple. He is excellent. But you got Steve Weisfeld here in Vegas. Like, he's doing some of the undercard stuff. I think Steve Weisfeld is the best judge in boxing, period. So if you've got some questions about how Don Trella scored that Canelo-Golovkin fight, the best thing to do would be swap them out. Like, put Steve...
Is it too late for something like that?
I think it might be, but I've been, on this show, and I've written a little bit, and I'll talk about it more on the broadcast like that. That's something to watch. Like, it had that kind of like my Adelaide Bird, alarm went off there in the back, like there, where it's like, could this become an issue? Now, I have a hard time seeing this fight go to the cards. I just don't see it. I think one way or another.
I don't know, man. Canelo hasn't gotten a knockout on this level. This is going to go to. I think this is going to decision.
You think?
Look, I was going to say, I'm a man who deals in logic. Canelo had Rocky Fielding a rehydration clause. We haven't heard anything about Kovalev.
No, there's none for this. I keep telling you that.
Have you heard anything about there being a
He's
clause?
been asking
because
for
look,
He thinks there's a secret contract.
If you give Rocky Fielding one, a
Right.
guy who's at 168, and you moving up to 175, a guy who's a bigger puncher than Rocky, you're not going to give him one?
I don't know. I mean, one thing about like the Kovalev side has basically been sworn to secrecy and all that stuff. Like there are massive financial penalties in place if they talk about this stuff. Like that's that's not unusual for something Golden Boy's done. They did it with
It's America.
I know, but like you can do it in Russia or Mexico or something like that. But it's not. I don't know if that's the case. I'd wondered that too. I don't know if that's the case. I'm sure I'll find out in the next couple of days.
There's an interview with Pheno Boxing. The woman, I can't remember her, but all right. She did an interview with Bernard where they were in detail saying that there is no rehydration
Bernard's
clause.
not going to tell you though. Like I need to hear from like Agus like that. If Agus is knows it, then
Duva, Egan, somebody.
any one of the main events. Jolene,
Duva swayed the question. She swerved it. But since we're on weight,
but if she swerved, doesn't that tell you something too? Like if there isn't one, aren't you going to be like, no, Canelo is doing this, like he
Straight
is
up.
willing to do this straight up? Like that to me speaks volumes. A non-answer speaks as much as an answer.
Yeah, because that matters a lot.
Of course it does. It mattered for Danny Jacobs. Like I sat in.
He came in at 170.
I sat in the fighter meeting. I mean, Jacobs, of course, he has a hard time making 160. Like that's just, and I sat in the fighter meeting he did right after the weigh-in, and he was just like shaking, like he was visibly shaking. And then he had to, rehydrate just to 170. He missed it, wound up missing it, but that was like the goal. That takes something out of you. Like it does. The fact that you can't just like go to dinner and naturally, organically do stuff, I think it takes something out of you.
all right, so we're almost pressed for time. So since we're talking guys moving up, Jamal Charlo, Andrade, everyone, even Gennady wants Canelo.
that ticket.
So I seen Jamal in Mexico, and I'm like, look, make your own lane. I mean, you're on the outside. use David Benavidez. He's a champion. He's Mexican. Move up. Make your own super fight. What do you think about that matchup, and do you think a guy like Charlo actually fights David Benavidez, since you already said there's no shot of him beating a Kovalev? That's one division below.
Yeah, I mean, I think Charlo's eventually going to move up. I think he's got 168 pounds in his future. But I have been effectively driving the bandwagon for Charlo and Andrade. Like, I'm at the point of making T-shirts up and wearing them around. I'm serious. Like, it's just, these guys need each other
Badly.
more than any other fighters in any division in boxing.
Who's gonna negotiate that fight? I talked to Charlo. He's like, "Oh, why would I fight him? No one knows him. Why would I fight him?
Nobody knows Charlo
we
either.
already
Like,
had a contract and he pulled out. Like, he's stuck.
I'm not
on
sure
the
that's true.
past.
Like this, maybe it was a long, but I mean, Charlo is an excellent fighter. Andrade, as we've talked about, a great fighter. Nobody knows who these guys are. Like, they just don't. And I like Demetrius a lot. I've done a lot of his fights now. He's one of my favorite guys in boxing. But nobody knows who he is. So here's my thing. If you want Canelo, if you want to be in that mix for a 160-pound unification fight, the only way to do that is to get a significant win in your resume. And that's them. So let's spin it forward. Let's say in like March of next year, Andrade fights Charlo. The winner of that fight is going to be the most marketable guy outside of Canelo at 160 pounds. Because Golovkin, he's still got a name. We'll see what he does next. But you will have, theoretically, two pieces of the middleweight title. You have the weird WBC one and the WBO belt. You can stand there and say, I am a marketable guy. I have a two-piece of the title. I'm coming off a win over fighter X. And we all know there's no politics when it comes to Canelo. Like, you fight on Dazn against Canelo. And even like Al Heyman knows that. Bob Arum knows that. Canelo transcends all of the nonsense in boxing. So give me that. Like, we talk about saying, banging the drum for no belts or the belt stuff. Bang the drum for Andrade versus Charlo. That is the fight to make in the middleweight division and the most necessary fight for those two guys.
Real quick, how do you feel about Big Baby signing with Top Rank?
I'm curious to see what commission licenses him first. Like, he's going to have to go through New York, I believe, at some point. I'm not entirely sure how that whole process goes, but whatever the WBA gave him was like, that was a fake slap on the wrist kind of thing. Like, and he tested positive for some real stuff.
Yes.
I wonder if there'll be like a retroactive suspension, if he's eligible to fight. I think on its surface, it makes sense. He's got a decent resume. And at some point, if you're going to keep Tyson Fury under your umbrella and some of these other younger heavyweights that they may have, you got to have an option. Who was the guy that fought in Philly? He was like the
Sonny Coates?
No, yeah. Like, so as he kind of gets a little bit older, maybe Jarrell Miller becomes a candidate to fight him. So I think Miller's got a name. He talks a lot, obviously. I think on its surface, it's a good signing.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris. I want to appreciate your time, obviously, for coming on the show and
Anytime,
talking a little
fellas.
boxing. Thank you.
Love it.
Thank you.
All right.
Yo, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to hit the like, subscribe, and share. As always, if you want to support us to the next level, head over to the patreon.com/ThaBoxingVoice. We have tons of exclusive from Border Wars, Entitled, betting shows, the list goes on and on and on. But in addition to that, if you guys have questions for fighters, trainers, and promoters, this is where you can submit them. We will run out, get these questions answered, and put it back on the show just for you guys. Appreciate it. Peace.